Hey guys, Matt Allen here. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin. Today we're talking metal baits. A lot of people don't understand them, but they are fish catchers. So today we're covering jigging spoons, flutter spoons, blade baits, and tail spins. A lot of people don't understand fishing the metal baits. You know, we talk about bass being so specific and needing to add a certain color of flake to your plastic worm or moving a bait a certain way. And then you see a guy grab one of these and bass eat it. And you're going, what am I missing? There is something to it. Now, I put these four into the same category. None of them are alike whatsoever, except that they're all straight metal baits. So we're gonna run through these, and today I'm simplifying it. I'm gonna do a few things. I grabbed two baits from each category. That's it. So two jigging spoons that I have the most confidence in. Two flutter spoons that I have the most confidence in. Same with blade baits and tail spins. And then when we get through all of that, I'm actually gonna hop up and show you how I work these different styles of baits, because how you work them and where you throw them is everything. The guy who hasn't caught a fish on a big spoon or doesn't know how to catch them on a tailspin or has tried a blade bait and it hasn't worked, it's just technique. It's technique and location. Today I'm gonna try and help you resolve that, because in fall, all of these are in full swing. All of these are catching fish all over the country. It's just about understanding which ones are the right fit for where you fish and then how to throw them. So first, let's run through the baits themselves. Then we'll talk gear really quick, and then I'll get up, we'll reset, we'll get out in some deeper water, we'll reset, and I'll show you exactly how to fish them. Personally, my favorite kind of spoon, at least until this year. This year I did really well on a flutter spoon too. I smashed. But over the years, my favorite way to spoon is a jigging spoon. I've got a bunch of spoons that I like, but hands down, the Blade Runner jigging spoon is my favorite spoon. I said I'm gonna narrow it down to two. I'm actually narrowing it down to one. It's just two sizes. This is the 1 3/4 ounce, and then that's the little guy there. Now what this is a lead spoon. It's just a hunk of lead. That's it. Straight out of the package, these can be fished for spots, largemouth, smallmouth, just like they are. If you're going to chase them a lot, if you're gonna do it a lot, or if you're going to chase striper, I recommend some upgrades on them, and I'll get to that. But the concept of a jigging spoon is that you fish them vertically. Now you can throw them out and work them too, but they shine vertically. So what I mean is if I'm in 20 to 25 feet of water or deeper. So in the fall, on some lakes, there's not a lot of deep water. This isn't your bait. But in a lot of lakes, there's a lot of deep water. You've got bass that push bait shallow, right? They push them up to the bank. You see them blowing up on them. They'll push them back in pockets and creek arms. But there's a whole nother segment of bass, and we've covered this multiple times, so it's not new to you. There's a whole other segment of bass that are chasing bait fish deep. That's where this shines. The concept of the jigging spoon is it's lead. It weighs so much, it will sink like a bullet. What we do is we use our electronics. Now, forward-facing sonar is here. It's amazing. I use my Mega Live to spot them and cast out to them, but that's new technology. We've been doing this for decades. Traditionally, we would just drive the boat around likely places until we ran over some bait fish. Once you find bait fish, shad or any other bait fish in a ball, if there's fish around them, that's where this shines. So the deal with the jigging spoon is getting over the top or near the fish and then sending that thing to bottom. Now when you throw it to bottom, the key is to keep a little bit of thumb pressure on the spool while it's sinking. Now I'm not in very deep water right now, so it's already down. But if I let this go down on its own, even though it's a jigging spoon, it still has a lot of flutter on the way down. But if I keep a little thumb pressure, it sinks A little bit of pressure stands it up, so it sinks like a bullet. It'll sink 5 times faster with just a little thumb pressure. You send that thing down to the fish. Now, there's 2 different times where this will shine. One, if they're chasing bait fish and they're on the bottom. So you're looking at your electronics, you're seeing those arches and they're flat on the bottom. I send it all the way to bottom and then I just start to hop it. And again, we're gonna get into retrieves here in a minute, and how aggressively you hop has to do with water temperature. But the other place that people fail to realize these shine is when the fish are up off of the bottom. And if they're up off the bottom, what I do is I drop it down on my electronics and I stop up above the fish. If my electronics aren't good enough to see my bait, no big deal. I see that the bait fish top out at 20 feet and there's arches around them. What I do is I literally count it off. I hang my bait over the side of the boat, raise my rod up to about 10 feet. I let that sink, raise it up about 7 more feet, let that sink. Now I know I'm over the top of the fish. Hop, let it fall, hop, let it fall, and I stay above them. And then once in a while, I'll give it a couple extra feet and let it fall down through them. But it's just a method of imitating a dying bait fish. So on a slack line, even though it's heavy, this thing is doing this, going to the bottom. And when they're around bait fish, when they're being aggressive and chasing bait fish, there's all sorts of shad that get killed but don't get eaten, and they fall out. And the biggest fish sit at the bottom and they scoop those up. That's why these are so special. You can catch giants on a jigging spoon, or any other spoon for that matter, but it's all about that flutter. Now you will notice, because these baits are sinking so quickly, that you'll feel fish hit it and not hook up. And a lot of people will swing, get upset, and reel up. You've totally blown it. If you get tagged and they don't get it, you want to just hop again. Hop again. Because it's darting and sinking and fluttering, these fish will just swipe, spin around, swipe again, spin around, swipe until they get it. They'll eat it 2, 3, 4, 5 times until they get a face full of that thing. It's incredible. I love throwing jigging spoons. Now the difference between my sizes is just matching the size of bait fish. If I've been on the lake for a long time, I know what the size of bait fish is. If I'm new, I typically start with the 1 3/4. Even though it's heavy, it's not big at all. I mean, what do I have laying in the bottom of my boat right now? There's a 4.3 Kitech for comparison. See, it's not big at all. So don't worry about the weight. And I'm not throwing it on big gear either. We'll get to that. So I start with the larger one, and then if I'm catching fish and they're kicking out little tiny baits, spitting them up, then I downsize to the other one. Hands down, this is my number 1. That's my number 2. Now in the jigging spoon, I use a lot of really bright, really bold colors. This is Morning Dawn UV. This is Sierra. We've got Electric Chicken, Fried Chicken, bright, bold colors, because the jigging spoon falls by them so quickly. I like it to be bright and bold so they can lash out and actually hit it. I don't want a dull or a natural spoon where they're just going to miss over and over and over. I want a good, clear target. Now let's talk flutter spoons. Flutter spoons this year really shined for me. I catch fish on them periodically through the years. I get on bites where they're eating them. But this year it was a staple. A flutter spoon was on my deck every day. If I'm gonna narrow it down to 2, let's start there. The standard, the 1 1/8, that standard size flutter spoon is money. The other one that I really, really enjoy is the mini mag. So we've all heard of the Magnum flutter spoons, right? The big old giant. I really like the mini mag. Let me pull it out. It's a huge spoon, but it's significantly larger than a standard, but significantly smaller than a Magnum. See that? This has become my bread and butter when they're chasing big bait. So when a flutter spoon, when a jigging spoon. I think that's the one thing people don't understand. The flutter spoon, as the name suggests, has more of a slow fall. So if I'm in less, now granted, as I say this, I will throw these in deep water, even in current. But if I'm in less than 20 foot, I'm 100% in favor of a flutter spoon over a jigging spoon. Once we get deeper than that, it can go either way depending on the situation. But the concept of the flutter spoon is it will sink quickly, same deal on a little bit of a tight line, it'll drop. But when I go to work it, it's got a slower, wider fall, so the fish have more time to grab it. That is a huge benefit to you in shallower water. Now, a lot of people up to this point are like, I don't fish water that's 20 feet deep, so why am I even watching this video? Make no mistake, your standard size flutter spoons will crush fish in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 feet of water. And that is highly overlooked. These are deadly around shallow docks in the fall. Pitch them up around the dock, hop them up, let them drift and flutter under that dock. You'll tangle with some really big fish. It's amazing how well they work in that shallow water. I will say the shallower you get, more of those natural paint jobs really come into play, especially if the water's clear. Deeper you get, the more I'm just looking at those bright, flashy colors. But the size thing, all the size thing is matching the bait fish. Like I said, normally I lean to a jigging spoon, but this year I got on a bite where bass were chasing gizzard shad. And I started spooning with both a jigging spoon and a standard flutter spoon, and I was catching fish. But I'm sticking fish, and actually I was sticking a bunch, so it took me a while to change. But I'm looking at the size of the gizzards that these fish were chasing. Every once in a while they'd come up on the surface after one. I'm thinking, my bait doesn't match that. So I went to the Magnum and I caught a few fish and I got a big one. And I went, you know what, I'm gonna go to that mini mag. The rest is history. I massacred fish. So it's literally just matching the size of what they're chasing. If they're chasing tiny bait, this isn't for you. Stick with more of the standard size. But if they're chasing bigger shad, if they're chasing gizzard shad, if they're chasing shiners, do not be afraid to try that mini mag. They slay. And straight out of, so one thing I like about these nickel spoons, both of those are stock out of the package. They come with a swivel on them. They come with a really good hook on them. You're just set up, it's just done. The only time I upgrade is if I'm chasing giant striper and I want a 4X hook. Otherwise, they're good to go straight out of the package. So, 2 sizes of flutter spoon, 2 sizes of jigging spoon. Now we're completely shifting gears here. Let's go blade baits and then tailspin. Blade baits have really come a long way in recent years. I mean, we've done dedicated videos about them. The blade bait should be in literally every angler's arsenal. The only guy who might want to shy away from it is the guy who's fishing from shore in a place that's really snaggy, because you're going to lose them. The flutter spoons, or any of the spoons, it doesn't really matter what's on the bottom because you're not touching bottom that much. Blade baits, we're making a lot of bottom contact. So I tend to throw them in areas that are either rockier or mud, open bottom. I'm not gonna throw them up on a laid down tree. You're gonna lose them because this is a bait we want in contact with bottom. Let's talk about the baits first and then we'll talk about how to fish them. The first one, this is a Demiki Vault. Man, I'm dropping baits today. The standard for me is the 1/2 ounce. And then just like the spoons, if I want to upsize a little, I go to the 3/4. But that Demiki Vault, all day, every day, year round, is a fish catcher. Blade baits didn't used to really be year round baits. And it's because they were just stamped metal baits, no paint on them. So when fish got up really shallow, they just sort of stopped working. But now that they come with really detailed paint on them, they just work. They just flat work. I'll throw them intermixed with my lipless crankbaits. Some days they want a blade bait, some days they want a lipless crankbait. But the way I like to fish a blade bait, you can do a lot of things with them, but the bread and butter for me, throw it out, let it hit bottom, and I can fish these, same deal as a flutter spoon. I can fish them in 2 feet of water. I can fish them in 10, I can fish them in 20, I can fish them in 50. They sink really well. They sink fast, but you let them hit bottom And then all I do is I get my slack out and I pull them. Just pull, and then I just let them pendulum back to bottom. Reel up my slack. Pull, let them pendulum back. And that's all I do with them. So one is going to be the Vault. The other is the Megabass, the Dyna Response. And Dyna Response, hands down, again, my favorite size is the 1/2 ounce. That's my standard. I grabbed 2 here because I wanted to show you, and I forgot to show you on that one, my hook upgrades and all of that. Because on blade baits, most blade baits come with junk hardware, like every brand. The Dyna Response has the best hardware out of any of them straight out of the package. So this one is straight out of the pack. It's got awesome hooks and it's got a snap. You can fish it just like it is. The only upgrade I do is I take that snap off and I replace it. My goodness. Before this is over, I'm getting hooked. I don't know what it is today. It's cold. That's probably what it is. My hands are a little numb. I switch it out to an Owner Hyperwire number 3 split ring. That's my only modification to the Dyna Response. And then I'm ready to rock. On the Vault, I change both my hooks and the snap. Again, number 3 Hyperwire, but my hooks and my rings are very specific upgrades. In the video description, along with the baits, I'll link my exact Vault upgrades. So, back to the Dyna Response. The Dyna Response, it has this tail on it. That tail makes this bait more subtle. So a Vault has this very aggressive, when you pull it, I mean, it pulls back. It's thumping hard, and then it free falls. Hard free falls. The Dyna Response with this on the back is very subtle. It's got a tight wobble. So, tight wobble, fall. Tight wobble, fall. I can't tell you which one is better because neither one is better. They're completely different. You guys know I'm a tackle junkie. It's not a secret. I have a box of each of these. That's how much I throw them. When I go out, I have both of them tied on, laying on the deck side by side. Every time I plan to throw a blade bait, I have both. The reason, and I have a bunch of other blade baits I like too, but if I'm gonna narrow it down, hands down, these two are what I've always got on deck. Every single day, one or the other is going to outshine. Some days they want it aggressive. They want that Vault. Some days they don't want it aggressive. They want the Dyna Response. And just because I caught them on a Dyna Response yesterday doesn't mean that if I come back today, that's the bait. That's why I always show up with both. It changes. So I always have both of those rigged up and ready to rock, but that is an amazing way to catch fish. Last but not least is going to be tail spinners. Then we'll quickly talk gear. And then, like I said, I'll set up and I'll actually show you how I'm working these different baits because that is the key. For tail spins, there's a bunch of good tail spins on the market too. We've reviewed a bunch this year, but I definitely have 2 that are my core. The first one is the Jackal Daracoup. That's my day in, day out bait. I throw that thing a ton. I fish it a lot of different ways. And that's one of the unique things about a tail spin is there are so many ways to fish them. One of the traditional ways to fish them is on bluff walls, steep vertical drop walls. Throw it up against the bluff, let it fall, pull it out, let it fall, pull it out, let it fall, because it's heavy. Like this one is a 3/4 ounce. That little tiny guy is a 3/4 ounce. So when you pull it out, it wants to sink like a rock, and then it's got that blade back there that's spinning like a spinnerbait. So that's spinning, slowing the fall and adding vibration, and as it's falling down those walls, fish will just jump out and eat it. You can also fish them right along the bottom. Throw them out, let them hit the bottom, pop them up just a little, and then just slow roll. Like a swim bait, swimming them just above the bottom. That tail's back there spinning, just like the tail of a swim bait, only you've got that treble hook hanging waiting to stick them. And then I also do like a pull and stop, just like the blade baits. I fish them that way too, and that's extremely effective. The Daracoup, I mostly like to hop it or fish it on steep walls. We've got the Demiki Axe Blade. That's my other bait. This is the one I prefer for more of that straight retrieve. Throw it out, let it hit bottom, reel it up a couple times, and then just slow, steady, just off the bottom. It's not that you can't do all the techniques with both baits. That's just what shined for me. The axe blade is much larger. It's got more of a willow style blade on it. So the overall profile, I mean, look at the difference here. Huge difference in overall profile. This one just does extremely well on that straight retrieve, and it has the added bonus of this. It's not a treble, but it's a double hook back here by the blade, and I hang a lot of fish on that double hook. Again, it's a larger profile, larger blade, so that double hook is key. So 2 baits in the same category, but I fish them night and day differently, and both of them are really good. Now, as far as gear goes for this stuff, it's pretty simple. You can throw these on rods that you already have. You really can. Things that are important to me: blade baits and tail spins I throw on similar rods. I throw them on my 610 medium X Pride a lot, my jerkbait rod. And I don't even have that one in the boat today, but I throw it on that jerkbait rod a ton. Throw it on a 7.2 medium light. I kind of go back and forth between those rods. But a lighter rod, and typically 12-pound fluoro or braid to a 12-pound leader. That's all you need. If you have more line than that, you're gonna bend out hooks. If you have less line than that, you can't pull hard enough while you're fighting the fish for them to not come up and jump and spit it. So 12-pound for me is key for both a blade bait and a tail spin. My spoons, that's a little bit different animal. Okay, I grabbed a few rods here. 2 of my favorite colors there. This is the Sierra. That's either electric chicken or fried chicken, depending on whether or not it has UV tape on it. Practically the same thing. You will notice, so both of these, this one is a 7.4 heavy, this one is a 7.5 medium heavy, extremely similar action overall. The biggest thing I want you to notice about my spoon rods: straight 20-pound fluoro, straight fluoro. You guys know I'm a braid to leader guy. This is one of those few techniques where I'm dedicated to straight fluoro. It just helps in fighting the fish. It makes a difference. My wife is amazing at throwing spoons. She's amazing at it. And she's the one that insisted that I should quit throwing braid years ago. And she was right. It really made a difference for me. Straight fluoro. Now I throw heavy fluoro. It's 20-pound. The only time I go lighter is with the little guy, and even there, I'm gonna throw like 15, 17, 18-pound. The reason why is there's so much flutter that they'll tie up on themselves. You'll end up throwing that thing down. The last thing you wanna do is get down in 50 feet of water and have that hook come around and hook that line. That's terrible, because not only have you blown your cast, you've got to reel it up all that distance with it spinning up your line and just screwing up your spool. So, straight fluoro, and then here's the biggest thing of all. See these handles? I prefer to throw them on either a full handle, or if it is going to be a split style grip, that it be smooth. I don't want a split grip where it's like a big cork here, drops down to a little bit of rod, and then a big cork here. That will kill you. And I'll explain it in a second. But let me show you too, on the Flutter spoon, same deal. Smooth transition. On my big mini mag, smooth transitions. So here's the deal. When I work a spoon for any extended amount of time, I might start out like this, thinking I'm tough for like 2 casts. It does not take long before that rod's tucked in, and this is how you work a spoon. Minor deal, except this, if it's got a big knob on it, will destroy your side, especially when you go on those hook sets. You'll rake your side. You will literally end up black and blue if you're on a good spoon bite. If you use a full grip or a smooth transition, no problems at all. That's just years of experience talking. You can take that one to the bank. The actual actions of the rods, less important to me. Longer, medium heavy, and heavy rods is what I like. I'll link my specifics in the video description, but you probably own a rod that's in the right type of category. Now, I did mention upgrades on my Blade Runner. I do 2 things. I add a Spro power swivel on the nose, and I upgrade my hook. Here's a stock hook, which is fine for a lot of things. It's actually a pretty good hook. But I'm a stickler about my hooks. When I get bit, I want those fish in the boat. This is an Owner ST56 size 2. Period. It's the only hook that I use on my 1 3/4 ounce. If I'm going down to my smaller size, I use an Owner ST56 size 4. That's all you need to know. ST56 and a swivel, and you're in business. That's my only upgrade. And that setup will get them. Now, on the big flutter spoons, a lot of people throw them on really long rods. That is a good option. Long crankbait rods, like heavy action crankbait rods. Same rod you'd throw your A-rigs or smaller swim baits on can be really good options. A rod that I never would have thought was good for this because of its length turned out to be amazing. This is the Megabass P5, the Tequila Baccarat. And we talk about that rod quite a bit for different things. This is one of those rods that has the craziest rating. It's rated 3/4 ounce to 4 ounce. It's only 7 foot. But this rod was designed, Tequila Baccarat, for people going to Baccarat or El Salto. People going to Mexico where you can't take a bunch of rods, but you need to do a bunch of things. I have found that the mini mag is amazing on this rod, even though it's only 7 feet long. My hookup to land ratio is remarkable with it. And I've boat flipped some giants this year on this setup. I fish it with a Bantam. It's just bulletproof. Now the big spoon, I do throw on braid to leader. I throw 50-pound braid, and then I tie a pretty good size leader on there, minimum 20, usually 25. It's that same deal. There's so much flutter, you don't want to come around and hook that braid. So that heavy leader makes a big difference. Now, let me re-gear. I'm going to move somewhere with some deeper water, and I'll show you exactly how I fish these baits. All right, let's run through the different techniques here. First one, jigging spoon. Again, this is a bait that I'm typically gonna fish vertically, but I'll pitch it out here just a little ways. If I let it slow fall, it'll take forever to get down. I've got slack that's slowly going. There, it just pulled tight. But if I take this thing, pitch it out here a little bit, and then just keep a little bit of pressure, that thing is shooting to the bottom. Absolutely shooting. We're in 25 foot. I'll tell you when we get there. There's bottom. Now, the way that we work the jigging spoon is just hopping it. Hop it and let it fall. But it's a pretty aggressive hop. So a lot of times fish are near bottom or on bottom. So I'm gonna hop it up and I'm gonna let it go all the way back to the bottom before I hop it again. Like I talked about before, if the fish are up, that's different. I'm just gonna wait until my line starts to get pulled tight again. The key with the jigging spoon is a semi-tight line on the way down. What I mean is that if I lift and drop this spoon on a tight line, lift, drop, it's just going like this, up and down off the bottom. It's doing nothing. If I do it on a completely slack line where I pull it up and lay all that slack down and just let it happen, it's on slack, there, it just pulled tight. It's fluttering. Fish will eat it, I'll never feel a thing. I'll have no idea. So the key is my line is completely slack, but I'm right there. I'm following the slack down. There's only 6 or 8 inches of slack. That way, the second a fish touches that spoon, I feel it. Because I need to be able to respond and set the hook, or at least know that it happened. So semi-slack, I'm right there following the slack down. That's the key. Now, the other thing you need to know about a jigging spoon is that these are the baits that I'm very aggressive with. The warmer the water, the more aggressive. The colder the water, we do almost nothing with them. So really warm water, you know, coming into fall, I'm doing this stuff. Really snapping that spoon up and letting it fall back down. Very aggressive. I want those fish to lash out and react. Now, by now, here we are middle of fall, going to winter. I mean, I'm over here working it like this. If I get another cold snap here on my lake, you're gonna watch me work them like this. That's all I'm gonna do. Soon as my water gets colder, that's it. And then the most important thing is that when it gets really cold, I'm talking winter time, because today I've actually got pretty warm water temperatures. It's not that cold for me on this lake. When it gets really cold, you're gonna see me over here just flipping the spoon. Literally laying on the bottom and it's just flip-flopping. That's all I'm doing. When the water's really cold, I'm talking high 30s to really low 40s, you just flip-flop the spoon in front of the fish. Again, I told you guys technique was everything. It's really easy to have the right baits and not understand how to throw them. All right, let's talk about the flutter spoon. The flutter spoon, it can be fished vertically, but it can also be cast way out there and worked. Either one. Let's send it out there. We'll let this go down to bottom. And while it's going down, let me explain. The jigging spoon, I use a very aggressive pull and fall, right? The flutter spoon, I'm much more subtle with. There, it's down. I'll pull it and let it flutter. And again, I'm following my slack back down. I want it to fall semi-slack so that I know something is going on. But it's a much slower pull of the rod. So where the jigging spoon is this motion, the flutter spoon is this motion. Let it fall. Pull it, let it fall. Much more subtle. And almost all of the bites come on the fall. When that bait goes up, they chase it, and then as soon as it starts to flutter, that's when they smack it. And if they miss, especially with a flutter spoon where it's got that slower fall, they might hit it 2, 3, 4 times on one fall until they get it. But a very different approach between the jigging spoon and the flutter spoon. Now you can see why we use them both. They're very different baits. Now let's talk blade baits. Now both my blade bait and my tail spin, I didn't have the right rods with me. So they're on heavy rods and 20-pound fluoro, but the concept doesn't matter. Throw it out there, we'll let it get down. Now again, I'm in deeper water. You can fish this deep, you could fish it in 2 feet of water. The technique won't change, just how long it takes to get down. There, it's down there. I'm gonna reel up my slack and then I give it a pull. And all I wanna do is I wanna feel that blade start to vibrate. Get a few vibrations out of it and I stop. And I let it pendulum back to bottom. Sorry about the chainsaw running in the background. Anytime we get where there's a good spot to film, there's always a chainsaw, a leaf blower, somebody backing up. It's always something. But again, pull, let it vibrate, and then let it pendulum back to bottom. That's all I do with the blade. It's so easy. I mean, anybody can fish a blade bait effectively. About the only time it changes is when the water's really warm and we're way, oh, there's fish busting over there. Here's how you don't normally fish a blade, but you can straight retrieve them. Let me just pull it through that, what I just saw over here. That didn't even look like bass, it looked like white bass, but it'd still be fun to catch one real quick. You can just straight retrieve them too, just like it's a lipless. What I was starting to say is the only time that you're going to see me fish it more aggressively is when the water's really warm, and you'll just see me pull harder. It's still the exact same motion, it's just a more aggressive pull on the rod. And then last is going to be the tail spin. That tail spin, I already talked about fishing it down a bluff wall, and we're not gonna go do that right now. It's really simple. You literally throw it out there, let it fall till it hits bottom, pull, free spool, let it fall till it hits bottom, pull, free spool. The other ways that you're gonna fish it, I'm throwing the derrick hoop here. Send it out there. We'll let it get down to bottom. Got all sorts of chainsaws going over here. All I'm gonna do, get my slack out, I'm gonna pull it up off the bottom, and there's two reasons I do that. One, I wanna get it off the bottom. Two, I want to feel that it's not fouled. I wanna feel that tail vibrate. So I'll pull it up off the bottom, everything's good, and then I just start a slow, steady retrieve. And if I feel it bump bottom, I'll just pull it back up and speed up just a little bit. I wanna stay just above bottom, and you slow roll it. I mean, pretend you're throwing a Kitech or a Bastrix or anything else, and just slow roll. Size of these baits, because you can get them in, you know, half, 3/4, 1 ounce, 3/8 ounce, just has to do with how deep of water you're going to be fishing. I throw the heavier sizes a lot, half, 3/4, and 1 ounce. But that's the basic retrieve. And then the other way that I'll fish it is exactly like I fish the blade bait. I'll throw it out there, we'll let it go all the way to bottom. Might be shallower up there, kind of on the end of a point here. Yep, it is shallower. So I'll get my slack out, and then it's just pull it up, and I'll feel that tail vibrate, let it pendulum. It's one of my favorite ways to fish a tail spinner. Cover in water. It's just like the blade bait, but in a lake where a lot of guys throw a blade, it's a very different look and approach to these fish, and you can go behind a guy throwing blades and catch them on this. But in most places, except for way up north, there's not a lot of guys throwing a blade, and a blade smashes. But this is a very simple retrieve, and it works, and you can cover a ton of water. And you'll notice with all of these baits, I haven't snagged up yet. Now, if there was a bunch of laid down trees out here, we'd have problems. But general mud or rocky bottoms, they'll come through them really good. These baits all weigh so much that even if you hang them up in rock, typically if you shake them, the bait itself weighs so much that when it falls down, it'll pull it out of the snag. It's really nice, and it's easy to get them out of most situations. I'm not saying you're not gonna lose a few, but you won't lose nearly as many as you think. All right, guys, we're gonna wrap it up here. Hopefully this helped you. These are baits that work all through the fall, all through the winter. A lot of them play year round, but prime time is now through the cold water months. So I wanted to give you my favorites from each category and then show you exactly how I work them, because these are baits that you can fish with a lot of confidence. They catch a lot of fish in cold water, and they catch a lot of really big fish that you're not expecting to catch on them. So I wanted to make sure you guys were dialed in as our water temps are all starting to cool down as we head into winter. If you guys enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll talk to you soon.